We are going to use the same database that we made earlier and learn the critical skill of making a form with a subform. This is a great way to show the one-to-many relationships between tables. For example, our invoice form will have fields from the invoice table and will also have the line items for the invoice from the invoice items table. Let's take a quick look at the queries we made during the previous lesson. The customer list query has two columns, one for the ID field and another with the first and last name concatenated together. The service code list has two columns, one for the service code ID and one for the description. Let's start with the invoice form. I'm going to select the invoice table, click the Create tab, then click the Form wizard to make a new form. Once the form is created, we can start editing. Let's do a little work on the customer ID field. First, we have to change the field from a text box to a combo box. Now we are going to use the list queries that we made earlier. Make sure the Properties panel for the combo box is open. First, we are going to select the query for the customer list. The first column is bound, meaning the ID number will be stored in the field. Set the column count to 2. Now we want to set the column width for the first column to 0 and the second column to 2 inches. Now, when we switch to Form View and click the Customer Combo box, we can see the customer name, yet the ID number will be stored in the field when we make a new invoice. Next, we will make the subform for the invoice line items. You can either make the subform before adding it to the invoice form or make one on the fly while working on the invoice form in Design View. I like to make my subforms first. Select the Invoice Items table, click the Create tab, and click the Form Wizard button. Select all the fields, select Data Sheet, give the form a name, select Modify the Form Design, and click Finish. Now we have a new form in Design View. Select the Service Code ID combo box. Just like we did with the Customer ID combo box, we are going to configure this combo box to use a query for the data source. Set the column count at 2. Set the column width to 0 and 2.5 inches. I'm going to add an unbound text box to the form to calculate the subtotal of the rate per hour times the hours worked. An unbound text box means it is not connected to a data source like a table field. Database design best practices says we should store the numbers for a calculation in a field, but never the results. It's better to let the computer calculate each time. This way, if you change the data values, the results will recalculate and always be accurate. Go to the Properties panel, select Data Source, open the Expression Builder, and select the form we're working on. Select Field List from the middle panel. Select the rate field from the list and double-click. Add a multiplication sign and double-click to add the hours worked field. Click OK. Back on the subform, we want to give the text box a descriptive name we can pick from a list later on. Expand the footer section of the form. Add another text box from the control gallery. This will be another unbound text box to total all the line items on the form. Go to the control source property and open the Expression Builder. Select Built-in Functions and select SQL Aggregate and Sum from the list. Double-click on the word expression and replace it with the expression rate times hours worked. Click OK. This totals all the records in the underlying table. Give the text box a name you will remember. Open the invoice form. Select the Subform Subreport control from the control gallery. When the wizard opens, select Use an existing form and select the form that we just made. We want to select Invoice ID as the linking field between records in the invoice form and the invoice line item subform. Make sure you like the name of the subform. Click Finish. Let's switch to form view. I'm going to start a new invoice record and see what happens in the subform. See the invoice ID also appear in the subform? This is the link. Since that happens automatically, we can hide the ID fields in the subform, giving it a cleaner look with no unnecessary columns. Now we can switch back to Design View and finish the invoice form. Add another unbound text box from the control gallery. Go to the Control Source property and open the Expression Builder. Select the total field from the subform to be the data source. Click OK. Change the format to currency. Switch back to form view. See how the form has the total for the invoice?